Well, thank you for joining us for worship this morning. We are going to talk about what we should do in the case of a stray ox. Deuteronomy chapter 22, 1 through 4. It says, if you see your neighbor's ox or sheep or goat wandering away, don't ignore your responsibility. Take it back to its owner. If its owner does not live nearby or you don't know who the owner is, take it to your place and keep it until the owner comes looking for it. Then you must return it. Do the same if you find your neighbor's donkey, clothing, or anything else your neighbor loses. Don't ignore your responsibility. So this is God describing to the people of Israel what it looks like for people to take ownership, for people to take responsibility for their community, to take responsibility for the way that God has equipped them and made them able to support, build into, edify their community. And that's what we're going to talk about today, not actually what to do in the case of losing a donkey. Does anybody have a donkey? No donkey owners here. So we're going to have to extrapolate that into what that might mean for our lives. In the New Testament, this challenge or invitation is found in Romans chapter 12, 1 through 11. And if you didn't get a little note sheet on these stands, of course you can go get it now, or you can get it on your way out this morning. But this hopefully will serve as maybe a Bible study for you later this week as you consider what it is we have talked about on Sunday, and as you consider the last question on the sheet, which is, how will you take ownership? So how is it that God has equipped you to serve the people around you, to put on that towel and go around washing feet? What does that look like for you as you follow Christ? So there is a process, we'll call it, in Romans chapter 12, and I've got those listed out for you, just kind of 6 different things in those first 11 verses. I'm going to go through that pretty quickly, and then we're going to hear from these guys. They're not just up here like for moral support. We're going to hear from them here in a little bit and try to put some skin on what it looks like for people to take ownership of what God has put in their lives for the sake of the church and the larger community. So Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 1, it says, and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. So the first thing is just in responding to grace, we surrender ourselves, right? This is the beginning of the walk with Christ. This is what it looks like. This is that moment of coming to Jesus, that moment of beginning our faith in God. It is being overwhelmed with his incredible mercy in our lives and then coming to a place of surrender. So that's where it begins. That's where this process starts. Verse 2 says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. We read that verse often, right? Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And so surrender leads to transformed thinking and living. Right? Once we get to that point where we say, turns out God's way is better than my way, and we surrender to that, then we're transformed in the way that we live and all the things that we do. It starts to affect everything we do, even the way that we think, right? It affects the things we think about. Next, verse 3. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. The Bible's so practical, isn't it? Be honest in your evaluation of others, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. And so this is, the idea here is transformation reveals itself in humility. Right? When you're starting to get a grip on this thing where, you realize, oh, I'm not God. Well, there's already a God. I'm not going to take that position. Humility starts to set in. Oh, it turns out I'm not actually like better than other people. It turns out God has created other people to be just as special as I am. And humility starts to set in. You might even get to the point where you realize, wow, those people, those other people around me, they're actually extraordinary. Man, I don't even know if I'm that extraordinary. And maybe you have to get to the point where you're like sort of reminding yourself, oh yeah, God created me too. Right? Because we can go maybe too far in this. But transformation reveals itself in humility. Verses 4 and 5. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. Humility manifests itself in servanthood. And this is where, ownership starts to set in. This is where we start to realize, oh, God has created me in a particular way, right? Ephesians 2:10, we realize we're God's workmanship. Like he cared about how he created us. He cared a lot about how he created us. He created us in a very specific way. And at some point we start to realize that. That's one of the incredible joys of following Christ, is that we learn how God has created us and how we are called into service. We realize we're created in Christ Jesus to do good works which he's prepared in advance for us. Now, some examples of that, or a particular example to give you an idea. Around Halloween, we do an event called Trunk or Treat. We have hundreds of people that come here, and there's a lot going on. And this last time we had like a traffic flow problem, and the person who was volunteering to try to kind of help manage that, RC, he saw that there was a problem. So he comes to Johanna and he says, hey, there's a big problem with traffic flow. I assume we're going to do this event next year, and next year I'm going to solve the traffic flow problem. And so essentially what it looks like is seeing a problem. Hey, there's a problem here. Knowing that you can figure out the solution to that problem, and then saying, I am the solution to that problem, and stepping into that. This is taking the towel off and going and washing somebody's feet. RC could have said, yeah, eventually this church will get it right. And got in his vehicle and gone home. But he chose a different course of action. So if there was a massive earthquake in the city of Anchorage right now, and there was lots of destruction, and our mayor said, hey, we need all hands on deck. We need everybody to rally. We need to get organized. So everybody show up at the Sullivan Arena. Probably not a good idea logistically, but let's just say said that. We all show up. Hopefully the question on our minds would be this question: how can I help? How can I help? And that is ownership, right? Like the people who show up at the Sullivan Arena, those are the people that care about the city of Anchorage. They care about the people around them. They've decided, this is my community. I'm going to invest in it. And this is what it looks like, showing up, asking the question, how can I help? So that's what we're going to be encouraging you guys to think about. And that's the last question on the sheet for you to think about now, this week, and going forward. What does it look like for you to take ownership? So the last couple of things. I think I read through verse 5. I read 4. Okay, so verse 5. So it is with Christ's body. We who are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So serving leads to the realization of significance. Back when I was a youth pastor, we would take teens on a trip to Los Angeles and Mexico, and we would emphasize to them as we were recruiting them how much fun the trip was going to be. We're going to have a beach day, recreational day, and we're going to be doing this traveling stuff, and it'll be a lot of fun. And they were all in. Of course, we didn't totally dupe them. We told them there would be the serving aspect involved. But when we got there, when we got on the trip, and when they started serving, the students realized inevitably that was the greater value. That the greater value was seeing their impact on the people that they were serving. on the joy of serving with other people. And so as they came back from the trip, nobody really talked about the beach day or the recreational day or the fun stuff. They talked about the significant stuff. And that's what happens when we step into servanthood. Verses 6 through 11, I'm going to tell you what sort of this part of the process is before I read it so you can be thinking about it. But desire for significance drives the diligent pursuit of excellence and authenticity. Right? It's this desire for significance. That's why we want to do what God has equipped us to do. That's why we want to do it well and diligently. So starting in second part of verse 6. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you're a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. This is just like a sampling, maybe, of how God has created you. There are lots of ways in which God has uniquely gifted us and created us and given us purpose and the ways he's called us. And the point here is step into that. Take it seriously. Go for it. Don't just pretend to love others, right? That's sitting back and not taking ownership. But don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Desire for significance drives the diligent pursuit of excellence and authenticity. So, hopefully, you're thinking of some ways in which God has equipped you. But I'm just going to ask these guys to help me put some skin on that. They're going to share a little bit about how they came to the place that they are at and maybe even give you some ideas about what it looks like to take ownership. You have the mic. You're first.
I'm first.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Johanna, and before I share what I want to do here, what I do here, which is I'm the community life leader, I want to share a little bit about why I'm so passionate about what I do and kind of how I came to be here at Awaken, here in Alaska. Specifically, I grew up in Virginia, in a town called Chesapeake, which there are some fun Chesapeake connections here at Awaken, which is really awesome. And I grew up in what most people would probably consider a really healthy Christian home. It wasn't until later in life that I realized what a blessing that was on my life. My parents, they don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk, and they instilled that in me and my siblings from a really young age, and grew up going to church. And like most people probably have this experience when you get out on your own is when you really start to learn things. And so I had all of the foundation, but it wasn't until I went away for college. I went to a very large college called Virginia Tech. It wasn't until I got there that I really started to realize the importance of community. And when I went to college, I started volunteering with an organization called Young Life. We talk about it pretty frequently here, and there's a lot of connections of our church with Young Life. But if you're not familiar with what it is, it's a ministry that reaches out to the youth of all ages, middle school, high school, college. And at my college, there was a lot of surrounding middle schools and high schools and our college itself. And I was sent out to a local high school with a few other leaders. There was usually about 6 of us, and I volunteered many hours of my week every week for all 4 years of college at a local high school, where I got to see really incredible things happen. I got to see kids really come to know Jesus. I got to see families change because of that, and really just like family lines change because of kids coming to know Jesus. And that was really, really incredible and definitely made a lasting impact on me. But I think, honestly, what was more impactful on me was the relationships that I made with the leaders that I led with. We were all volunteers, giving usually like 20 plus hours of our week to go to sporting events and go hang out with kids after school and pick kids up before school and do Bible study with them and all these things. And that led to really, really deep friendships with all of them because it experienced in that time how deep community is really forged through being on mission together. When you have a common mission or a common goal that you're taking ownership of, that is where you have you have the footprint for really deep friendships to be born. And I look back over that time and think, like, for many of those people, I'm following Jesus today because of them and because of the impact that they had on my life and because of the experiences that I got to have with them. And not just with those 6 people, but there was a greater ecosystem of about 120 college students that were all doing this together. So we created this really amazing community that worshiped together, that ran after kids together to come to know Jesus, that ran after families together and took kids to camp and all these really amazing things. And that is, where I just realized the importance of community. So I moved here to Alaska a year after I graduated from college. And that first year post-college was really, really hard for me, trying to kind of run after recreating that community that was made over 4 years. And I just had a really hard time with that. And so I decided I needed to change. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Alaska. And it wasn't that random. My sister lived here at the time, so I had some family here. And I moved up here just for the summer. And then I never left. Still obviously haven't left. And my sister has now moved back to Virginia, back on the East Coast, which is where all my family is. And so I decided to stay here with no true family, I guess, as you could consider it. And that was a really, really big step for me. And part of the reason, or the main reason that I did that, is because I found such deep community and family here at Awaken. The staff and many people that are in this room became and have become my family, the people that support me and encourage me and make me be able to stay here when my family is not here. And so that is really a big part of what my job is here at Awaken and why I'm so passionate about it. I create connections and try to facilitate connections for new people that are walking into the door the first time, or for people that have been going here for longer than I have, and everybody in between. And I think that is just so incredibly important. And that happens through a variety of different ways within my job description, which is facilitating the nursery, facilitating the children's ministry, and all of our youth activities, which is in partnership with Ross and Veronica, who also work here, as well as doing all of the outreach events, which Heidi helps me out a lot with, and all of that coordination. And all of the things that I think tie all of those together are volunteers. That is probably the biggest part of my job here, is equipping and coordinating volunteers and caring for volunteers and helping each person that comes here find a place that they can take ownership, where they feel like they can be well used, that they feel like they're using the gifts that God has given them. And so I've been asked to share a few ways of which people can do that through my specific job here at Awaken. And there are a lot of really small areas and large areas of which you've probably heard us ask for volunteers in a lot of different ways, in the nursery and in the children's ministry and hosting and all of these different things, which many of which are on the serving board out in the gathering room, and also on our website if you want to read all the ins and outs and the very specifics of what all those things are. But I think the thing that is most important for all of you to hear is a way that each and every one of you can take ownership. It doesn't require signing up for anything. It doesn't require any type of orientation or training, or at least it doesn't have to. And that is being a part of creating a welcoming environment for every single person that walks through the door. Being on the lookout for a face that you don't know, or a face that you do know maybe that looks like they might be having a hard time, and greeting them and welcoming them, or even just saying, we're so glad you're here. Maybe you're not a small talk person. I'm not a small talk person, but I think just being something as little as saying, hey, I recognize that you are here, and I'm glad you are here. And maybe you love to talk, and maybe you're like, I love small talk, and I want to talk about people's weeks and all those things. And I think that just goes to show that God can use each and every one of us, and that every single person has a place to help create and foster connections and help create the familial environment that we really want and really want to run after here at Awaken. And so that's what I would encourage you in to think about this week as you're considering how you can take ownership of just doing something that you already do, which is show up here on a Sunday morning and just look out for faces and be a welcoming person for other people to encounter.
My name's Willie, and I grew up here and found my way to Awaken about 8 years ago. And not too long after that, Levi came and found me and said, "Hey, Willie, I think that you should redo our website. It's in need of a little love." And I like to think that it didn't take too many snide comments from me in order to get him to come ask me. But he recognized that I was that kid who was taking apart VCRs and making robots with them. I was the kid who got the very first iPhone so I could figure out how to program applications for it. And that turned into the church website that you know today, that continued to grow into all the cameras that you see around you that are broadcasting this online. That turned into all of the technological outreach that we have here at Awaken, and that was because of my childhood. My affinity for technology became my safe space. I was so comfortable to be on a computer around a small amount of people that made my introvert heart feel safe and happy, and to get to know and to kind of imbibe information in my brain by myself. And at the same time, I was getting to know Jesus through Awaken Church, and my life radically changed, and I saw how the gifts that God gave me were partnered with the shortcomings that I thought I had, my inability to get up in front of a large group of people and speak, the discomfort that I felt in youth ministry. All these things I thought were roadblocks to keeping me from sharing this good news that I experienced. But it turns out that it was God showing me that He'd equipped me in this really specific way to share what He had done in my life. And that looks like the internet. And right now, this is streaming out to Facebook. There's a quarter of the Earth's population on Facebook. I'm not very good at math, but I'm pretty sure that is a lot of people. And it's free. We don't have to pay to play. This is just going out there with very, very little effort. I'm just going to sit and revel in that a minute, because that is so important. Each and every one of us sitting in this room here right now have a different story of how we came to know Jesus, how God showed Himself in our lives. And that story, yours and yours and yours, all has countless touch points. All those little plot points look different. But the fact is that there were so many of them that at a certain point we couldn't ignore what God was doing in our life. And as believers, we are called, as Levi just read, to be active participants in our community. And in my gifting, that means being the person here at Awaken Church who has my fingers in all the little technology, because that's what God gifted me. And yes, I would love for God to put it on your heart to sit behind the camera and operate the camera, to switch the live stream on Sunday mornings, to be the people online that greet others as they join us. And that's a lot. It doesn't have to be your gifting. What I think it can do, and what I know that He will do, is empower each and every one of us to use what is in our pocket right now to demonstrate to our own communities how powerful Jesus is, to take ownership over your belief and to declare it boldly to the world, whatever that means for your circumstance. So today, I know that you can pull out your phone, that you can go to our Facebook page, that you can like it, that you can share the sermon video, that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, that you can do a very, very small step to proclaim your faith. And because there are so many people out there that haven't heard Jesus, but are still on the internet, that we can turn on one more light bulb with just a press of our button, of our finger against the screen, and share what it is to be an active Christ follower. So join me in bringing a little bit of light to the garbage world that is the internet, because it can be used for good. It's a scary place, but it's our job as Christians to make it a little less scary.
Yeah. Cool. You have your own mic.
I do.
Does everybody know Krista Harms?
No. I'm Krista, and I lead our worship teams here, along with our tech team that operates the lights and our sound and the words and images that you see on the screen. And all of us, not just myself, make great efforts to create a space on Sunday mornings where we are able to congregationally walk into this place and not have a single distraction in the room that would take our eyes off of fellowshipping with God. So that is our hope. That is what we long to create here with our worship teams here at Awaken. And Levi asked me to share a little bit of my background as to how I became so passionate about what I get to do here at Awaken. I did grow up in church, and I grew up singing. I actually didn't play instruments until a few years ago, but I loved to sing. And worshiping in church and worshiping at the private Christian school that I went to was a very routine practice for me. But as I got older and I faced a lot of trials and choices that I was making were taking me into dark places and putting me into the path of destruction and sin, coming into a place where I was worshiping God actually became my meeting place with God. And it became the space where He met me with grace and with love and with peace. It became the place where I was able to truly see that His grace was sufficient to cover all of my filthiness. It is the place where I experience God's power and His restorative and healing presence, His holy, holy presence. And so I love that I get to teach as a person who is a worship leader. You don't just sing and play an instrument. You have the opportunity on Sunday mornings to teach the people that are in this room and the people that are listening online. Teach them what it looks like for us to encounter God's holy, powerful presence. I love that I get to walk with people as we do this choice-oriented posture of life that we call worship. And it is, in fact, a choice because we don't always feel like worshiping. But it becomes this choice to relinquish control, to release what's in our hands, and trust that God's got us. And so that's why I feel so passionately about what I get to do here at Awaken. And unbeknownst to you, you may not realize there are actually lots of ways that you can take ownership in our worship experience here at Awaken. You may be a person who is musically gifted and you just haven't spoken up about it. And I will tell you, sometimes I can't hear you guys. I pick out harmonies. I'm like, I hear someone right there in that area. I'm going to find them. So sometimes I do have to hunt people down. But participating in the band on worship, in in the worship aspect on Sunday mornings. It's just one of the ways. So if that's something that you have been feeling you'd like to have a conversation with me about, I would invite you to have that conversation with me. Our tech team would love to have more support. And it's a very easy role to be trained in. But the most common, the most universal way, I'm going to say, for all of us to participate in ownership of our worship experience here is simply to worship. It is that simple, yes. And that looks different for every person. I want to just share with you briefly, I had a friend share with me why he and his wife had chosen to come to Awaken. They were church shopping, and he spent 3 weeks here, just sitting on the front row, and came to me afterwards and said, Krista, thank you for creating a place where I could worship today. And I just loved that his worship looked like just sitting and just communing with God. Maybe he was praying, maybe he was journaling. I don't really know. But it doesn't have to look the same for every person. But I will say, when people around you see you worshiping God, it encourages, it invites, and it endorses their ability to worship. And whether that's I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen and I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to talk to Jesus while I listen to this music. Or maybe it looks like I want to stand and I just can't not lift my hands. Or maybe it looks like I just want to sit here and I just want to write. I'm going to write a letter to God this morning as I sit here and worship. I really want that to be known to you, that we do believe that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and that your worship offered up to God is such a precious thing to offer to Him. So offer that to Him. It encourages and edifies the body that you are a part of to do that.
Yeah, okay, thanks, guys. So maybe as you're sitting here listening to some of these things, maybe some ideas have come to your mind. These are just, tiny little sampling. This idea of taking ownership over what God has given you could go in so many different directions. Maybe you have a shop and you want to invest in some younger guys and you know how to weld. And so you invite younger guys over to, and gals, I guess. Girls could learn how to weld. Right. Yeah, sure. And so you could invite these younger folks over to, teach them how to weld, or maybe you have a heart for young military folks and you want to provide a place that is just open and welcome for them, and you're going to invite them over for dinner, you're going to invest in them. Maybe you love to go fishing, and so your goal is to get everybody in the church to go fishing and to experience how incredible that is. And please don't take me if we're not keeping the fish. We need to keep the fish. I don't get this sport fishing thing. Why would you ever throw a fish back? You went through all that work of getting it. Anyways, total sidetrack. But God has created you in some unique way. Maybe I'm trying to think of something off of my chart. Maybe you like to make wreaths. And you get people together to make wreaths. You do that, yeah. So it could look at, this... God's given each one of us different skin, right? And so we manifest God in all of these different ways. I don't know how many people are sitting here today, but 90 people or something like that. So God manifests in all of these different ways. How is it that God has uniquely shaped you to take ownership in the body? Like, what is your role in the body? So Johanna and I especially are very much about a big part of our role here is to help you figure out what your role is, right? Like, we're here to equip you in the way that God has called you and gifted you. We're here to call you out. That's just what we're doing this morning. We're here to remind you that God created you in a very specific way, right? He cared deeply about how he created for you or how he created you. He has a very specific way for you to live in the way that he has created you. And so we're here to help you try to figure that out if you don't know already. We're here to help serve alongside you. We're here to help you find a way to serve, to lead, to love, to encourage, to do the things that God has equipped you to do. So, bottom of the sheet, if you didn't grab one, please grab one of these little sheets as you leave and take that with you. Think through that, be praying about this, and ask God for discernment. Ask God for courage to step into what he's calling you to do. But that last question is, how can you take ownership? Right? And that's the question that God is asking you in Romans chapter 12. That's the question that God asks us over and over. Hey, I've given you this. Hey, I've given you this, right? Parable of the talents. I've given you this. What will you do with it? How will you take ownership of the things that God has given you? How will you step into that? So please take that with you. Please be thinking about that and praying about that, and please step into that in some way. And I promise you that as you step into service, you will see significance. You will see it, right? The promise of God is taste and see that the Lord is good. So please bow your heads and join me in prayer. Father, we ask that you would show each one of us, or in many cases, remind each one of us what it is you have for us, how it is that you have created us. Father, help us come to a place where we celebrate even the things that we have done poorly, that we think are wrong, that we, even in times when we rebelled against you, show us how you will use all of those things to lead us into the purpose, to be a part of the foundation of the purpose that you have for us. Father, I pray that you would give us the courage to step into this place of servanthood, that you would help us with the humility piece to take a towel and begin washing feet, that you would transform our hearts, our minds, as we surrender ourselves to you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.